Welcome to Whispers in the Dark, where we shine a light on the shadowy, untold stories that haunt the criminal world. Remember to share, like and subscribe if you are new. Today, we unravel a case that gripped the Baton Rouge community, a tragic and heartbreaking story of a young mother, a school teacher beloved by many, and a respected administrator who harbored a deadly secret. Lintell Washington was a woman who seemed to have it all. As a mother and educator, she inspired her students, friends, and family. But behind closed doors, there was more to her life, a relationship that began in secret and ended in murder. Today, we dive deep into the case of Robert Marks, a school principal who betrayed the trust of not only his students and colleagues, but also the woman who once looked up to him. What drove this man to take the life of Lintell Washington? Was it love, fear, a desperate attempt to conceal the truth? In this episode, we'll explore every corner of this case, uncovering the layers of deception and tragedy that led to one of the most shocking murders in recent Baton Rouge history. As always, we start by understanding the victim, the heart and soul of any crime, before following the clues that lead us deeper into the darkness. Lintell Washington was born and raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a place she never thought she'd leave. To her, it wasn't just home, it was a community that supported her dreams and aspirations. After graduating from Southern University, Lintell found her calling in education, working as a teacher for over a decade. Her dedication to her students was unmatched, and she quickly gained the respect of parents and colleagues alike. Outside the classroom, Lintell's life was centered around her daughter, a bright-eyed 3-year-old who was her world. Balancing motherhood and a career wasn't easy, but Lintell made it work, pouring her heart into both. Her days were filled with lesson plans and bedtime stories, a life as normal as any could be. But there was a side to her life that few knew about, a relationship that was far from ordinary. It was with someone she trusted, someone who held a position of power in her professional world. That someone was Robert Marks, the assistant principal at the school where she worked. To understand the tragedy that befell Lintell Washington, we must first understand who she was: a woman with dreams, passions, and a life that, in many ways, was filled with hope. Lintell was a natural-born teacher, someone who could captivate her students with the way she spoke and interacted with them. Her ability to reach children who struggled academically or socially made her stand out among her peers. She didn't just teach, she inspired. But beyond her career, Lintell's most cherished role was that of a mother. Her daughter was her world, and she embraced the challenges of single motherhood with grace and determination. For her, being a good mother was about more than providing, it was about being present, showing her daughter love, kindness, and strength. Lintell's colleagues would often remark on how her face lit up whenever she spoke about her child. Her life may not have been perfect, but she was content. However, hidden beneath this outward appearance of normalcy was a complicated and secret relationship, one that would ultimately bring Lintell's life to a tragic end. The affair between Lintell and Robert Marks wasn't widely known, and for good reason. Marks, a married man and the assistant principal at the school where Lintell worked, wielded a considerable amount of power and influence. The two had met through their professional connections, and over time, a relationship developed. But this wasn't a story of love or romance. It was one of manipulation, deceit, and ultimately, control. At the time of her death, Lintell was pregnant, the father of the child, Robert Marks. It was a pregnancy that Marks wanted to keep hidden. He was a married man with a family of his own, and the prospect of his affair with Lintell becoming public terrified him. This secret, along with the pressure it placed on Marks, would prove to be the tipping point that led to her murder. The days leading up to Lintell's death were marked by a growing tension between her and Marks. She had been vocal about her pregnancy, and while it was a source of joy for her, it was a source of fear for him. Marks knew that, if word got out about their relationship, it would destroy both his personal and professional life. And so, in a moment of desperation, he made a choice that would forever alter the lives of those involved. On the night of June 9, 2016, Lintell Washington went missing. Her car was found abandoned, her 3-year-old daughter inside, blood smeared on the seats. When authorities arrived, the little girl said something chilling: "Mommy is in the lake." Those words would set off a frantic search that would end in the discovery of Lintell's body just days later. But this is just the beginning of the story. As the investigation deepened, more details about Mark's life, his affair with Lintell, and the events that led to her death would come to light. This case wasn't just about a murder, it was about betrayal, manipulation, and the lengths to which one man would go to cover up his darkest secrets. In the next chapter, we dive deeper into the investigation, piecing together the evidence that pointed to Robert Marks as the prime suspect in Lintell Washington's murder. Stay with us as we follow the trail of clues that reveal the truth behind this tragic crime. On the night of June 9, 2016, Baton Rouge police officers responded to a call they would never forget. In a quiet parking lot, tucked behind a row of businesses, they found an abandoned car, a silver sedan that belonged to Lintell Washington. Inside, they discovered something chilling: Lintell's 3-year-old daughter, sitting in the back seat, unharmed but visibly shaken. Blood stained the seats of the car, and the toddler's words would send chills down the spines of the officers present. "Mommy is in the lake." This innocent, yet haunting statement would trigger a desperate search for Lintell Washington. A search that would span multiple days and involve countless officers, volunteers, and members of the community. As time passed, the hope of finding her alive began to fade. When Lintell's car was first discovered, it was clear that something terrible had happened, but there were few clues as to where she might be. The blood found inside the vehicle suggested violence, but without a body, investigators had little to go on. Still, the words of Lintell's young daughter, "Mommy is in the lake," lingered in their minds. Could this child really hold the key to finding her mother? The Baton Rouge Police Department quickly launched a missing persons investigation, combing through phone records, surveillance footage, and interviewing anyone who might have information about Lintell's whereabouts. Family, friends, and co-workers were questioned. The community held out hope, though they knew the odds were growing slim with each passing day. 3 days after her disappearance, on June 12, 2016, the search came to a tragic end. Lintell's body was discovered in a body of water near a levee in Iberville Parish, not far from where her car had been found. She had been shot in the head, and her body showed signs of foul play. It was clear that this was no accident. Lintell had been murdered. The discovery of her body sent shockwaves through the Baton Rouge community. A beloved teacher and devoted mother, Lintell's life had been stolen in the most violent way imaginable. But as the investigation into her murder began to unfold, it became evident that this was no random act of violence. Someone close to her, someone who had been a part of her life, was responsible. As investigators dug deeper into Lintell Washington's life, one name continued to surface: Robert Marks. Marks was no stranger to Lintell. He was her boss, the assistant principal at the school where she worked, and, as detectives soon discovered, the father of her unborn child. Robert Marks, a married man with a family of his own, had been involved in an affair with Lintell for some time. It was a secret relationship, one that few knew about, but it would soon become the focal point of the investigation. Marks had a lot to lose if the affair became public knowledge, and with Lintell pregnant, it was only a matter of time before the truth would come out. The pressure was mounting for Marks. The relationship had grown increasingly complicated, and Lintell had become vocal about the pregnancy. She wanted Marks to take responsibility, but for him, the consequences were too great. His career, his family, his reputation, everything was at stake. It didn't take long for investigators to shift their focus to Robert Marks. He had been one of the last people to see Lintell alive, and the affair provided a clear motive. But detectives needed more than just suspicion. They needed evidence to tie him to the crime. One of the first pieces of evidence came from Lintell's phone records. Her phone, which was found in the car with her daughter, revealed a series of text messages exchanged with Marks in the hours leading up to her disappearance. The tone of the messages was tense, with Lintell pressing Marks to take responsibility for the pregnancy. It was clear that this conversation was escalating, and detectives believed it could have been the spark that ignited Marks' deadly actions. Investigators also obtained surveillance footage from the area where Lintell's car was found. The footage showed Marks' vehicle near the scene on the night of her disappearance, further solidifying his involvement. As the evidence piled up, detectives knew they had enough to make an arrest. On June 15, 2016, Robert Marks was taken into custody and charged with the murder of Lintell Washington. The arrest sent shockwaves through the community. How could someone so respected, so trusted, be capable of such a heinous act? But for those who knew the details of the case, the evidence against Marks was damning. Cell phone records placed him at the scene of the crime. Surveillance footage showed his vehicle near the abandoned car, and the forensic evidence found in Lintell's car all pointed to one conclusion: Marks had killed Lintell in an attempt to cover up their affair and the pregnancy. Still, the question remained: what had pushed Robert Marks to take such drastic measures? Was it fear of losing his career? The pressure of maintaining his public image? Or was there something darker at play, something that led him to believe that murder was his only option? The murder of Lintell Washington left a hole in the hearts of her family, her students, and her community. It was a senseless crime, one that could never be undone. But even as Robert Marks sat behind bars, awaiting trial, the questions lingered. Why did it have to end this way? In trial began, the true depth of Robert Marks' deceit would come to light. The evidence was overwhelming: his lies, his manipulation, and ultimately, his decision to end Lintell's life to protect his own. In the next chapter, we'll take a closer look at the trial, the evidence presented, and the emotional impact it had on both Lintell's family and the Baton Rouge community. Stay with us as we continue to unravel the chilling details of this case and the downfall of Robert Marks. After months of investigation and preparation, the trial of Robert Marks began in late 2017. It was a case that had captured the attention of not only the Baton Rouge community, but the entire nation. A man with a once sterling reputation, an educator who had worked with children for years, was now on trial for the brutal murder of Lintell Washington, a mother, a teacher, and the woman who had been carrying his unborn child. The trial was more than just a legal battle, it was a reckoning for the dark secrets Marks had tried to keep hidden. From the beginning, it was clear that the prosecution had a strong case. The evidence against Marks was damning, and the prosecution wasted no time in laying out the key pieces of evidence that would ultimately seal his fate. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence presented by the prosecution was the forensic evidence collected from Lintell's abandoned car. Blood samples matched Lintell's DNA, and the position of the bloodstains suggested a violent struggle had taken place inside the vehicle. Additionally, there was no sign that Lintell had attempted to leave the car of her own accord, leading investigators to believe that she had been forcibly removed and later killed. Then there was the surveillance footage. Video evidence placed Marks' vehicle near the scene where Lintell's car was found. This was a crucial piece of the puzzle. It provided a timeline that connected Marks to the crime, and the prosecution argued that it proved his involvement in the murder. Perhaps the most damning piece of evidence came in the form of text messages exchanged between Lintell and Marks in the days leading up to her murder. In these messages, Lintell had repeatedly asked Marks to acknowledge their relationship and take responsibility for their unborn child. She was frustrated, demanding accountability, and it was clear from the messages that Marks was feeling the pressure. His responses became colder, more detached, as he avoided the situation with vague promises and deflections. For the prosecution, these messages painted a clear picture of a man who was growing increasingly desperate. They argued that Marks saw Lintell's pregnancy as a threat to his reputation, his marriage, and his career. In his mind, the only way to protect the life he had built was to eliminate Lintell before she could expose their affair. The defense, however, was not willing to let the prosecution's case go uncontested. They argued that the evidence was circumstantial and that there was no definitive proof that Marks had committed the murder. They suggested alternative theories, including the possibility that Lintell could have been the victim of an unrelated crime, and they attempted to poke holes in the prosecution's timeline of events. While the defense tried to cast doubt on Marks' involvement, the weight of the evidence against him was overwhelming. The prosecution had built a case that connected him to every step of the crime, from the affair to the murder to the disposal of Lintell's body. And with every new piece of evidence presented, the defense's arguments became less and less convincing. As the trial progressed, the jury began to see the cracks in Marks' defense. The prosecution's case was too strong, too meticulously constructed, and the emotional weight of the evidence was undeniable. Witnesses testified about Marks' behavior in the days following Lintell's disappearance, describing him as distant, uncooperative, and evasive when questioned by police. His lack of emotion raised red flags for investigators, and it didn't take long for the jury to see through his facade. The final blow to the defense came when the prosecution presented the autopsy report. Lintell Washington had been shot in the head at close range, a clear act of premeditated murder. The forensic evidence showed no signs of a struggle in the water, meaning that Lintell had been killed before her body was dumped in the lake. This was no crime of passion or momentary lapse in judgment. It was cold-blooded murder. After days of emotional testimony, forensic evidence, and expert witnesses, the jury was sent to deliberate. The courtroom was silent as the weight of the trial hung in the air. The question on everyone's mind: would Robert Marks be found guilty? It didn't take long for the jury to reach a verdict. When they returned to the courtroom, the judge asked the question that everyone had been waiting to hear: "Have you reached a verdict?" The answer was swift: "Yes, Your Honor." With the world watching, the jury delivered their decision. Robert Marks was found guilty of the first-degree murder of Lintell Washington. The guilty verdict was a victory for Lintell Washington's family, but it was a bittersweet moment. No amount of justice could bring her back, and the loss of her life was something that would haunt her loved ones forever. As Robert Marks was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, there was a sense of relief. But there was also a profound sadness. This tragedy had claimed not just one life but two. The trial may have been over, but the impact of Lintell's murder would be felt for years to come. Her students, her friends, and her family were left to pick up the pieces of a life that had been taken too soon. And for the community of Baton Rouge, the trial of Robert Marks was a stark reminder that evil can lurk in even the most trusted of people. In the aftermath of the trial, the community came together to honor Lintell's memory. Her students spoke of her kindness, her colleagues remembered her passion for teaching, and her family clung to the memories of the woman they had lost. Lintell Washington was more than just a victim. She was a mother, a friend, a daughter, and a teacher whose impact would live on in the hearts of those who knew her. As for Robert Marks, he would spend the rest of his life behind bars, a man who had lost everything in a desperate bid to protect a secret. The trial had revealed the depths of his deceit, his willingness to go to any length to preserve his public image, and the darkness that had consumed him. The murder of Lintell Washington was a tragedy that shook the Baton Rouge community to its core. It was a reminder that even those we trust the most can hide the darkest of secrets. Robert Marks, a man once seen as a leader and a mentor, had allowed his fear and desperation to drive him to commit the ultimate act of betrayal. But in the end, Lintell's legacy was one of love, kindness, and resilience. While her life was cut short, her impact on her students and her community would never be forgotten. And no justice had been served. The question would always remain: how could a man like Robert Marks, a man who had seemingly everything, throw it all away in an act of such senseless violence? This case is a chilling reminder that beneath the surface, behind the masks we wear, lies the potential for darkness. And in the case of Robert Marks, that darkness led to the tragic loss of an innocent life. The story of Robert Marks and Lintell Washington is one that leaves us with many questions. How could a man who dedicated his life to education and leadership commit such a heinous crime? What led him to view murder as his only escape? And how do we, as a society, reckon with the fact that even those who seem beyond reproach can hide such darkness within them? The case serves as a haunting reminder that secrets can destroy lives, that fear and desperation can drive people to unthinkable acts. But more importantly, it reminds us of the importance of seeking help, of being honest, and of recognizing the signs of danger before it's too late. Lintell Washington's life was tragically cut short, but her legacy lives on in the hearts of her students, her family, and the Baton Rouge community. While the trial of Robert Marks has come to an end, the memory of Lintell Washington will endure. Thank you for watching this episode of Whispers in the Dark. If you found this story compelling, please like and subscribe for more true crime cases that shine a light on the darkest corners of the human soul. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and remember, even in the darkness, the truth always comes to light.